rebroadcast this later on.
Am I being shown in the bottom right with a little face?
What is that?
Is my image being shown in the bottom right with a little face?
Yeah, I can. Let me pull that out for now. So lots of times these will get cut up, and they'll just take the relevant section and stick it on something we're working on or whatever. But be going in a second. Okay, let me see what I. People know I'm going. Well, I'm so mad about this routing issue I'm having. Routing is the bane of my existence. I spent a lot of time working on that kind of stuff, and this is just, of course, it nails me right the second I get. I haven't had a guest on in a while. All right, so I'm just gonna let this go for a second, make sure it's going. All right, here we go. Some caffeine. All right, welcome to Evidence Based Audio. And this is number 202. And I'm calling this one the chairman himself because we got special guest TJump on here, who is likely to be, in just a few years, the godfather of modern epistemology. We'll see about that. First of all, I want to talk about there's a new Audient product out, and I'm hoping this is going to make a big difference to some of you. And I know there's a lot of things where the companies don't seem to hit their target market. They miss some very important things. We're probably talking about Focusrite here. They pretty much own this market. This is another 8-channel mic preamp to ADAT. In this case, it's got both A to D and D to A. So this is both ways. So if you remember, we had so much trouble with so many of these 8-channel devices where syncing them was hard. If you just had one of them, it was fine, but you would see in the advertisement where they had like 3 or 4 of them. And if you really had that many, you wouldn't really be able to sync them unless you're using some archaic stuff. Like I got a word clock in the other room from 1999, hoping it doesn't blow up just to distribute this word clock crap. Most of these Focusrites, and most of them actually, the word clock termination was undefeatable, so you're stuck. You had to find some way of distributing this stuff, and it was just a nightmare. So in this case, this new device from Audient, it's got switchable word clock. Or because it's got A to D and D to A, you can sync it from ADAT, which is pretty reliable. I mean, I'd actually rather do that than word clock. I trust it. Think how many devices we've had like that. They don't have the silly compressors. You're not stuck with it. It has some sort of smart gain or something. I'm sure you can turn that crap right off and just run it. It's just supposed to be paired with one of their newer interfaces. There's like a 16-channel version of this thing that's probably got Fesicon drivers in it, so I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's great, but I'm just going to stick with the RME stuff. But allegedly, if this isn't vaporware, it's going to go for about $500. Should be allegedly shipping in February. And like I say, it's word clock in only, but the word clock is defeatable. So you could go and use some T connectors and finally have some competition for what you've been having to buy so far. And if you go on pipelineaudio.net, there's a comparison of like every one of these 8-channel to ADAT things on the market. And I'll be adding this in if it turns out not to be vaporware. But this is extremely good news. This is a company actually listening to what their target market is, and let's hope that it shows up. I'm in Google. Everybody's saying someplace lists around $499. We'll see. But again, chip shortage and all. Who knows if this thing's actually even going to exist? But now, after all that babbling, let me get back to. Let's see if I got this right. Sorry. All right, I'm going to bring on TJump himself. You guys may know him from all the debate shows. He's got the clamshell chair of death that everybody's terrified of, and he's skewers many an opponent from sitting there. And can you tell us just a little bit about you, Tom? You're not really in the music side of things, but you're definitely in the expert side of things.
I'm TJump. I sell bathtubs on YouTube, and very, very good at them. Professional bathtub salesman. Biggest job ever. Also do occasional debates once in a while, but mostly bathtubs.
All right, and you got you do some gaming content too, right?
Yes, occasionally. Used to, at least.
Yeah, a lot of our guys do sound for games, whether or not they're doing the mixing, scoring, or if you've ever seen it, I don't know how you would like, but if you ever seen the way people create sound effects, like grown men playing in a sandbox with a bunch of toys and stuff, it's absolutely awesome.
Yeah, I've seen the
We got a
sound
lot of
design for
these guys.
movies. Those are pretty
Oh, yeah.
good.
It's one of the most amazing things to see. Okay, so what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I don't know how much of this nonsense you know, but you know, for me, I was raised in the religion of pro audio. Like the second I was able to get into the recording studios and stuff, and it really is a religion. They believe in some crazy stuff, and I believed it, and I pushed it, and I forced it on people. And when people wanted to buy something, I told them, no, you have to buy this $5,000 mic preamp or whatever. There's a lot of tenets in this, like nothing made after a certain date is any good. And the originals can't be recreated because there's some unobtainium that you can't get anymore to build it out of. The alleged properties of these things and the specs in their gear are never actually published. It's just a giant god of the gap. So like it's the second you can make something that's exactly the same, they say, oh, but it doesn't have this, and they use these weasel words like euphonia and warmth and brittleness, and like it's crazy. You'll see the same words used to describe completely different things. But then again, there's these super high-end vendors that somehow, even though it's unobtainium, they make these devices that are just as good as these old things, and they create that magical whatever. But again, they don't publish any data or specs. And there's also the guitar tone wood thing for electric guitars, or putting a certain name brand on a guitar instantly makes it objectively superior to any other guitar. But anytime you ask for, okay, what are you measuring that in? Is it is stability, or what are you even talking about? They can never say it, and it just. But people are so terrified. Like I'll tell you, did an album with one of Bon Jovi's producers way back in the day, and he had to have this one certain reverb because it was used on a hit that he had done before, and it was such a piece of junk. Nobody ever wanted it before, so most people just threw it away when new reverbs came out. So this is like the early days of eBay. We had to find one, and it cost him $12,000 for this thing that you couldn't have gotten $50 for at the time. Everybody was throwing them away, but you had to have it, and that's when you have that belief. You have that belief, and there's no way around it. There's magical power cables, like it doesn't matter the 30 miles of wires that this thing had to travel from the power station to your studio. It's that last 3 feet that's got to have this magical power cord that costs $500 or whatever. Again, no actual specs or data. And then, of course, there's magical speaker cables, which, again, there's no actual specs or data with this. And in this case, back when the JREF was still a thing, the James Randi Educational Foundation, they were going to do one with the pair audio, which is like $60,000 for this cable. And the way they were going to set up the test, any idiot can make a cable that's going to make the sound worse. Like just cut one end of it, for instance, or throw a diode in there to clip it. And the thing that Pear was saying is we'll be able to tell the difference between our cables and whatever you use. And I was like, no, okay. And this is why I need somebody like you, because James Randi didn't understand that somebody could pull that trick. I was like, let's say we want to see which one's better, and objectively people test it, not whether or not you can distinguish it, because you can easily distinguish a broken cable. So I wanted to measure these things and see if one actually spec better. And that's the kind of thinking, like, and I miss it a lot. So we also have magical mic preamps, which are probably the biggest bane of existence of this whole thing. And it's just constantly like, this mic preamp has this character and this one has this character. They all sound the freaking same. Um, there was a a test SOS did where Sound on Sound, where they got all these magical mic preamps, stuck them all together, took all the forum blowhards that are constantly bloviating about this crap, had them do a blind test. They ended up picking the 2 cheapest mic preamps as their favorites every single time. It's like Art and a Mackie, the stuff they talk crap about all day long. There's magical microphones that, again, can never be created again. They're made out of unobtainium, but again, no specs or data, and we make great microphones nowadays. Of course, there's analog versus digital, and tubes versus transistors, and impulse responses versus speakers. And to me, most of the time, there's really only 4 parameters that matter if we're talking about, what you're actually measuring. What's the noise level? Is it distorting when you don't want it to distort? What's the bandwidth, like the lowest and highest frequency that you can reproduce? And what's the frequency response? And that's really the things we can measure. There's some other stuff too, but that doesn't always matter. So I wonder what you think about this. So you said that okay, so I didn't know you're doing any of this stuff, and then you put out a video where you're playing Eugene's Trick Bag, which is there's like fighting words for guitar players, man. Like that's a video to put out. You're going to get angry comments about and stuff, but that's awesome that you did that. That's a quite an ambitious thing there. And so so you're saying that you had to do a journey finding out about not just Tonewood, but probably some other junk too. And how did that go for you?
Yeah, I was researching guitars because I got into it. Started playing. Yeah, Eugene's Trick Bag was actually the first song I learned how to play. It was the only one I was actually interested in learning. And I was looking at guitars. Went to a guitar shop, started playing all the different guitars, tried to figure out if there was any difference between the really cheap ones and the really expensive ones. Started to research and play with parts and see if I could make it sound better. And ultimately, it sounded like the $120 guitar and the $2,000 guitar sounded the exact same, and I couldn't tell the difference. So I was like, well, why would I going to waste the money on this really expensive guitar when I can just buy a cheap one? Sounds just as good. And so I bought like a $150 Ibanez, and it's sounds just as good or better than the friends who I play with who have really expensive guitars. And so it's like there's just no point. It's all just hype for the most part. The only parts that really matter are the the like amplifier. That's the biggest part. Amplifier makes most difference. And I got a digital amp, which people don't like for some reason, and they're the best kind for objectively. And that's pretty much the most important part. Any guitar you have, if you have the right amp, you can make it sound like any other guitar.
Yeah, Glenn Fricker, I don't know if you've been watching him, but he's done a lot of videos where he's really showing that for the most part, especially for the stuff we're doing, like the distorted stuff, it's going to be the speaker as the final EQ that makes so much difference. He's been doing lately. He's been doing videos on pickups where people can't even tell certain pickups apart, which is kind of trippy. I thought there was more pickup. Back when I was in the religion of pro audio, I really believed that, for instance, maple fretboards were much brighter than rosewood fretboards and things like that. And so I would always record with lots of different types of pickups. And I can tell, like on an EMG, that there's a little bit more compression than on some other passive pickups. But listening to the sound of somebody else playing them, they sound so close. It's blowing my mind. I got Oh, hey, David. David actually is a follower of your channel too, I think. He's saying your audio is louder than mine. How's that now, David? Did I turn it up correctly? So yeah, Glenn's been doing a lot of videos on pickups lately. He did one on tubes where he just took a bunch of tubes and kept swapping them, and nobody could tell the difference. And man, they really fried him for that one. But I always say that with the electric guitar, the pickup, it's a motor, right? It's just like the alternator on your car. You're sticking a bunch of you're running something through a magnetic field and it's turning into electricity. And if you took the metal hood off your car and put a wood hood on there, it's not going to make any difference to how much power the thing's putting out.
Yep.
And we constantly have this debate, and even Paul Reed Smith, he tried to prove tone wood by taking a piece of wood and hitting it with the stick. And I'm like, well, yeah, you could make a xylophone that way, but how are you gonna, even if it was true, like the species, I can have a really hard piece of maple or a soft one or a wet
Oh,
one or a
that's another
dry
thing.
one.
There's a new kind of artificial fretboard. It's like plastic, but it feels like wood, and my Ibanez has it, and it's phenomenal. But
Oh,
there's some really big stigma against using it because it's black like ebony, so it imitates ebony,
ah.
and it's very, very cheap, very inexpensive, but most people hate it and never use it. And so I got that just because of how amazing it is, and everyone hates it in the industry because it's not the standard.
A lot of our shredders when they're starting out, before the pandemic, the Dean had this $100 Dean Vendetta out. If you wanted a non tremolo guitar, and yeah, it was $100. Now it's like $150, I think, and it was 24 frets, two humbuckers, just really good stuff. And it's just amazing how good those guitars are for $100 or for any price. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff you don't get more when you pay more money for. Like, you can buy this like $12,000 Fender Custom Shop Strat, and it's still like a 21 fret guitar or whatever with that crappy block heel and craptastic tuners, a piece of crap tremolo, and some single coils. Whereas I love these Korean. Pretty much now, because of the internet, we know where everything's made, and it turns out that almost every guitar is made in the same shop. For instance, or microphones and stuff. And there's this Korean shop called World Musical Instrument where they were just fanatics about guitars the way the Japanese were during the 80s and early 90s, and they build unbelievable guitars. They build the good ESP LTDs, they build my off-brand Agiles, and they do it all really well. So I just crack up when I see people spending this nutty money and saying that if it doesn't say Fender or Gibson on it, it must be a piece of junk. But I'm like, I want 24 frets. I don't want a block heel. I want a Floyd Rose. So it's just so weird that what people will believe in versus what they can actually show.
Yep, and that's not just true of guitars, it's true of most things. So, like, there's that wine thing where the wine aficionados say they can
Oh yeah,
tell the super expensive wines, and they can't. They've done that test like 3 or 4 times on, TV, and they show that, "Oh, can you actually tell a difference between this really expensive wine versus the, box wine?" And they never can. A lot of the
no.
times they pick the box wine. It's the same thing, it's just this, elitism of just the lucky rabbit's foot mentality of it seems like I had this really good experience with this one particular thing, and therefore it must be due to this one particular thing that I had the experience when really it's just a coincidence.
One of the frequent victims on this show um, is the sommelier, which is the wine taster, and we use that
Aficionado.
term for pretty much everybody, right?
Yep.
And one of the ones was there was a pretty big one where they couldn't tell the difference between white and red wine. That's where I said wow, and I think that was when I think that was when the JREF was still around, and that was about when I broke out of the I was like, I better test this maple versus rosewood brightness thing, and sure enough, like my ears could not tell who was who after that, because I thought at least they can tell the difference between white wine and red wine. And when something that big was shown like that to me, I really had to start rethinking stuff. And I already was very skeptical about. I'd already left the magical mic preamp thing and the digital versus analog thing, but I still had this, man, this maple thing must be brighter, on this guitar. It's just wrong, man. It's really hard to get rid of your beliefs. I was never I was an atheist since I never had a belief in gods or anything, but that didn't keep me from believing this. These were my mentors. These are the people that I worked really hard to be able to work for and with, and they were telling me all this stuff. They believed it. They still believe it mostly. And man, it's hard to get out of that sort of mindset.
Yep, just the shortcuts in human imagination. You take the things you're most comfortable with, the people you trust, kind of like parents, and you just listen to what they say and believe it without testing it. And you end up having a lot of false beliefs when you put a lot of hope into those kinds of unjustified positions.
Um, so, we have and there's so much stuff I'd love to go with you with. Ethan Weiner does. I don't know if you ever seen him. He's kind of the James Randi of audio, but he's really an acoustician. That's his job, is to make I don't know if you know about, like, making control rooms flatter, more accurate, more predictable. One of the hardest things about mixing audio, if you're actually recording and stuff, is the effect that the room has on you, frequency wise. That there's like, he did this one experiment where he was showing. Do you know what standing waves are? Uh,
Yeah, I think I've heard of it. That's the part where you have two waves that cancel each other out and like
well, that,
balance it
that's an
perfectly.
effect of standing waves. So basically, a standing wave is just a mathematical measurement of the room. Like, if it's this size, then there's a wave of this size that can sit there, and it divides down. Or if you've ever seen, like over here, we have, if we open up a canal or a river and it's going into the ocean, there'll be a wave just sitting there that you can surf on, and it feels like you're going 100 miles an hour, but you're not moving anywhere. And that's so basically, the size of a room and the shape of a room dictates what frequencies are going to be louder or softer in the room. The room is an equalizer, and so it's very hard when you're mixing a song to know if you got enough bass or a certain frequency, because the room is canceling it out or adding to it, and it's just really throwing you off. So these acousticians, use a variety of stuff, to trap the bass or to diffuse it or to absorb it. And in order to make a more accurate listening position. So, like, when you talk about uh, what would be evidence, novel testable predictions, right? Um, in mixing, you need to be able to predict what this is going to sound like outside of your room. So you need the most accurate room possible, and that's what he does. His main job is to do that kind of stuff, but he also just busts frauds all over the place. So he really does like the James Randi stuff, and he had a video where he would measure a room and he'd put a balloon up at the part of the room where a certain frequency was loudest, and you could see that there'd be like a plus 18 decibel balloon inches from like a minus 12 decibel of a frequency that's really close to it. And so even if you sat in the perfect spot in the room, just turning your head a couple inches would ruin everything. And that's the kind of stuff you're up against, and that's kind of why a lot of this nonsense is hard to cancel out, because it's so complicated to get everything right anyway, that you can always hide something in the really wiggly part of the unknowns of audio, and it gives them a place to hide, and it sucks because I really wish it wouldn't.
Sure.
But when we have our panels and we're talking about speakers, or I don't know if you've ever seen Shock D Stones. There's like a lot of really high end platinum producers believe that taking these rocks, and I'm talking like river rocks, you put them in the room someplace, and they make the sound better for the whole room. And I mean, you could hide them in a shoebox or whatever you want. And I mean, there's some crazy stuff. You paint the edges of your transistors with green paint. I mean, there's some stuff that would like blow your mind, and these are the guys that are making crazy money. But it's, again, you don't want to mess with them. Like, I've had guitar players that no joke wear 35-year-old unwashed dirty socks, because that's where they had a hit on one of their albums a long time ago. And you don't want to mess with people with their psychology like that. You just like, okay, dude, it's fine. I'm not gonna stop you.
Yep, it's just like a religion where you have the things that make you feel most confident and comfortable, and you just do those every time.
Yeah, it's scary. So what I really want to do, and before Murphy's Law hit me and kind of nailed me, is, so you've seen this video from Jim Lill before, where he wanted to find out where tone comes from in an electric guitar, and I don't know if you watch his other videos. This guy is never mind that he's a. I don't play country stuff, but I wish I could play the stuff he plays. He does some crazy chicken picking stuff, you know. Um, but whenever he does his videos, he always plays like the silly farm boy guy. He's like, I'm just a guitar player. I don't know how this works. And one time he did an amplifier one, and he got the transistor one sounding so close to the tube one. I think everybody got mad at him. But in this one, so you watch this whole video, he goes, okay, is it the shape of the neck? Is it the type of wood? And then he finally ends up with no wood, right? He's got two benches, and he's got the ultimate air guitar. Let me get this out of here. Make this a little bit bigger here. So he's talking about. What's he doing here? So he goes through like the tuners. He goes through the shape of the neck. Okay, this is the part I really wanted to show here. Let's see. Where is it? It's right. So I'm going to play this. This might echo on you for a second, but just let me play this one little part here.
What 5 factors in an electric guitar make the most difference in the amplified sound? Here's how they responded.
Okay, so he asked 3 big time guitar manufacturers, luthiers or techs or somebody. Actually, I do know guitar techs that would say this. What 5 factors in electric guitars make the most difference in the amplified sound? And the funny thing is, okay, first of all, they're not the same, right? But so number 1 here, and I swear this could be Paul Reed Smith, the body wood as a big contributor to the general character of the sound. Number 2 is the neck wood. 3, the pickups as the microphone and tuner for the sound of the first tube mate. Now, I don't know how much you know about this stuff, but to me, this is a common myth. Pickups are not microphones. Pickups are motors. They take mechanical energy and convert it to electrical energy. They're not. Well, I guess that's what a microphone does too. It's a transducer, but it's the pickup directly just is making electricity like a motor, but a microphone is basically a speaker in reverse. You're taking air pressure and turning it into electricity, whereas the pickup is actually metal cutting across a magnetic field, turning this stuff into electricity. And so even though you can talk into your guitar, take your strings off and see if it's still microphonic. Most of the times you won't be able to. So number 4, he puts here the hardware, the bridge, and the tuners that help contribute to the tone and tension feel. So feel, never mind. But lots of times people, I got kicked off a forum one time because the people were telling, hey, you can't use that bridge. It was a certain tremolo because the metal it's made out of eats all the high frequencies from your sound. And I'm thinking, at first that sounds plausible, like at least it's going to reflect more or something if it's hard enough. But no, when you actually test this stuff, it doesn't. But this is such a hard one to crack because I don't know. Is it a fallacy where, let's say somebody got cancer, for instance, and people will keep saying, oh, but did you try this one? There's this special guru that lives at the top of this one hill, and he makes this eggplant juice that if you drank that would cure your sister's cancer. And you are responsible for trying every single thing anybody ever claimed. And to me, it's like, no. First, they got to be able to say that it's feasible or that it works before I have to buy every single thing.
Burden of proof.
Yeah. They got to meet a burden of proof, but they don't like to hear it that way. So, like, what do you?
I mean, the only thing to do is to say, how do you differentiate imagination from reality? Pretty much, you're just going to say, okay, so you have a hypothesis that this thing makes a difference. Can you show it actually makes a difference?
That's okay. Let me see if I can keep that one next time So one of the things, I don't know if you were on the guitar. So you in your journey, you probably ran into a couple guitar forums and videos where people were claiming certain things. And I remember this guy, he wanted a much higher output pickup with lower noise, which, it kind of brings you into the EMGs or whatever. And he was a noob. He just bought his first guitar, and he had saved up for forever to get his nice killer guitar. I can't remember if it was an Ibanez or whatever. It's a really nice guitar. It's either an Ibanez or a Schecter or something. And the guys on the forum said, well, you could use this pickup, but you can't. That guitar you have is a mahogany body. You can't use that pickup in that body. It just won't work. It'll sound like an ice pick. I'm like, so I asked, do you have any evidence for this whatsoever? I got banned from that forum just from that. It was crazy, man. I mean, this, so this first guy says, I guess finish is left. So, man, if you want to see people really get into a fight, it's over the sound between nitrocellulose and polyurethane finishes. Now that, when it comes to an electric guitar, I don't care what amp you play, what speakers, what pickups, nothing. Nitro versus poly is the absolute determiner of tone, And none of these guys will ever put a single test that says this or that. Ethan Weiner was notorious for taking coat hangers and using them as speaker wires to prove that they sounded just as good as, whatever $1 billion speaker wire, or go to Home Depot and buy lamp cord as long as it's big enough for what you're doing. And it sounds fine. So this is number 2 guy here. It says the number 1 factor in the tone, in the amplified sound. Remember, this is how he asked it. And this I really like that. And this is where I get it wrong. This is what you would ask too. Like, this is how guys like you get this right and guys like me get this wrong. He made sure that he says make the most difference in the amplified sound. He's making sure that we're talking about the whole thing going through the pickups and everything. So the wood's not going to matter because you're not micing it. So this guy says number 1 is the neck. Tone follows the neck more than anything. I mean, does it? I mean, if you don't have a neck, then you won't have tone. But in this one, he has the air guitar. The neck is actually made out of air, and it's still got tone. Number 2 is body wood. Ash versus alder. Number 3 is the weight of the body. Now, have you seen one of these guys that poured guitars out of concrete?
Yep.
And supposedly, there's a way to make that sustain like longer than a normal guitar, but I think Jim Lill actually tested that, and it didn't really turn out that much. I think Ethan Weiner was saying that, if you had a really dense body, it might sustain longer, but maybe not. The bridge saddles. Okay, so you could have soft saddles, which like they make these things called string savers. I forget who makes them, but they're soft. And so if anything was going to damp your sound, these saddles would do it, right? But those string saver saddles, even though they're soft like graphite, they're touted by these tone guys who insist that everything has to be made out of super hard metal. And then these same guys will buy brass saddles. Hard Left Productions. Ethan's book is great. I read it a few years ago, and it changed the way I thought about audio forever. I think you guys said I'm going to buy a copy of Ethan's book, The Audio Expert, and give it to Tom because Tom likes to read, I think. So
I hate reading. I'm dyslexic. I hate reading.
Okay, so maybe we can torture Tom with that one. So number 5 this guy puts is pickups. Okay. So this last guy says number 1 is the player, and the player. And Glenn Fricker did a video where he was showing, they're talking about is the tone in the hands or not. And he kind of showed that for the most part, it really wasn't. You could kind of get the same sound by all these different guys. But I remember one time, okay, so this is like when you hear if you ever hear this from your doctor, in my experience, that's like usually the 3 most dangerous words a doctor can say. But in my experience, I had an Ibanez, a scalloped Ibanez RG570 back in the day, and I had EMGs in it, and we were doing a Dawkins album, and here's George Lynch, and he's like, I played scallops before, let me try yours, and he really wanted to play a scallop guitar, and he picks it up, and it sounds like a single coil. Like it sounded like him. And so, I know there's part of the thing in the hands, but then again, that was a much lower gain tone setting, but I tripped out that this humbucker EMG sounded so much like a single coil. And the Audio Expert. So this guy says the player. And I guess you could argue about that one. Number 2, the guitar's pickups and other electronics. So there we go. Number 3, the guitar's hardware. I don't know. The construction of the guitar, chambering of the body, and the guitar's scale length are examples. So behind me, I have 25-inch scale length, 29-inch scale length, 27-inch scale length. I think that's it for these ones. And I could never really tell the difference between the scale length, but I think that could have an effect, right? Because you're moving the standing waves of the string. You're moving the harmonics apart or closer together, and maybe that's why they say Les Pauls sound fat and Strats sound thin. I don't know. But the chambering of the guitar doesn't seem to make any difference. Semi-hollow body actually doesn't seem to make any difference. Neck through versus, remember everybody used to talk about neck through versus bolt on was going to make some huge difference in sustain, and that didn't seem to be. And then so he puts on number 5, the wood, the materials that the guitar is built from. And so, Tom, when you see these 3, I'm assuming these guys are bigwigs, and they get the science so wrong. Like they worked in this industry their whole life, and they never really tested this stuff for themselves. Like how, what if you think about another field that does this kind of thing, like if you drill for oil and you need to be able to know how hard the rock's going to be that your drill's going through. I've seen creationists that are actual oil experts, so your job could be to dig up old stuff and yet still think the earth is 6,000 years old. Like what? I don't even understand how it's not even cognitive dissonance in this case. This is like straight refusal to actually test what they're claiming to know.
I think it's an anecdotal fallacy. It's using personal experience to come to sweeping conclusions about something that's true universally. So it's the same thing as like when somebody would pray over someone and have their cancer healed. I think you mentioned that before. And they said, oh, well, then it must be attributed to the prayer. Like, no, it's just a coincidence that those things happen to coincide. And those things happened in music, in football, in all kinds of wine or whatever. And so they attribute the positive experience to whatever preceded it. It's post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. And they think that that is necessarily the case, that this thing will increase the probability of the positive outcome, which there is no evidence for that whatsoever. And so it's just combining human intuitions that haven't been tested with the post hoc ergo propter hoc, and that's what you get. And it's really common for snake oil salesmen, Reiki, spiritualism, all that kind of stuff. It's all the exact same human intuition that just goes wrong.
So I like how you say it that way, because then you can do that without accusing them of malice, right? Like that's it's just their, but at some point it becomes your responsibility when people are paying you to do this stuff that you actually know what the hell you're talking about, but I mean, the thing is they get results, but they often get the results the wrong way. Like, you like Jim Lill shows, man, you take a block of, I mean, there's guys who make guitars on fences, right? They just put a bridge on one part of the fence and the tuners on the other part. They sit there and play it, and their friends come over and play it and stuff. We know this stuff. It'll work regardless of what you did, because you got the right pickup and you put it in the right place and you put it at the right height and whatever else. And so, yes, you got the thing right, but you attribute it to, well, luckily for you, the guitar came with nitro finish, but I put polyurethane finish on it, and that's what did it. Like they keep misattributing the cause to something else, and it's just I don't I don't like taking people's illusions away from them, because I have I've seen it before when people find out that Dumbo's Magic Feather is really not needed, and they're really not able to finish their album. Sometimes they lose their confidence, and so I don't really mess with that. But when people are attacking noobs on forums and telling them, hey, you got to buy this audio interface or this computer or whatever, without any evidence behind it, that's where I get upset, and that's where I spend most of my time, is trying to keep people from doing stupid things with their wallet.
Give it to
And
TJump. Donate to TJump, Patreon, PayPal. I think that's what you should do with your wallet. Yes.
yeah, there you go. And okay, so Hard Left Production says that he's dyslexic as well, and he hates reading, but he still loved the audio expert from Ethan Weiner. So I think we're gonna have to send you that book anyway. Let me check one thing. Okay, and so I was gonna go through this this video, but I don't think we really need to. One of the things that he did that really, and I tell people this all the time. So I have where are they? There's little cards that you can buy off Amazon that have like it's really easy to check pickup height and string height and stuff with, and just getting your pickup height the same when you're comparing two different guitars and making sure they're in the same place. It's amazing what a difference that'll make. Like what which guitar did you get? You got an Ibanez what? Like a GRG or something?
Maybe it's the cheapest one. So, cheapest guitar.
Because yeah, the Geos are like the cheapy Ibanez's, but they're pretty damn
That's
good.
That's it. I got one of the Geos. That's it.
Okay, well, see, okay, some of them are made by World, I think, and regardless, those are still shredder guitars, man. They're killer.
Yeah, that's the one I'm playing. The Eugene's Bag of Tricks on is a Geo.
Oh, cool. And yeah, so you know, like I mean, it works. It you plug it in, it makes a sound, right? It does what it's supposed to do. The neck is actually kick ass for shredding. Like it's a real flattish, nice radius, good frets on that thing.
For sure.
They may not be as polished or as straight as if you paid a lot more money, but I've seen crappy fretwork from some pretty expensive guitars before. Okay, so yeah, Hard Left Productions. I have a Geo 2. I've had it for 15 years. The neck is rock solid. So, lately I've been, as I get older, I'm not liking holding neck through body guitars just because the insane weight of them anymore. And so I wanted to get a bolt on, and I saw that there was a Geo on Amazon for like 200 something bucks, 24 frets, 2 humbuckers. So I was going to get that. And, but it comes with the good neck joint, that rounded neck joint. I was going to get that and stick a, not a Floyd Rose, but Goto's version of the Floyd, which is what I've been using lately. And just carve the whole back out of it and make like a Reb Bach guitar or whatever. And it would cost me like 200 bucks. And then I found a service online where they scallop your neck for you for like 200 bucks. So you make the ultimate guitar out of this thing. But I'll still tell everybody, oh, it's a bottom of the line Ibanez Geo, just to make them mad. Because we have bands that come in here playing those things, and they're awesome.
For sure. Yeah. The quality of the material matters more than its prestige. It doesn't really make a difference what kind of where it came from or which machine shop did it, as long as it's done well. Who cares?
Yeah. I just really this one I really want to make an introduction to my audience with you. Not that I have the billion followers, but this typically gets chopped up and sent to different places, and I want people in the music industry to really think about epistemology, to really think about why you know what you know, or how you think you know what you know, or whether or not what you think you know is actually true, and really importantly, how to find out if whether what you think you know is true. And I know like half the people are going to cancel me for even mentioning his name, but Peter Boghossian was really good to me about explaining this stuff, and what he was saying, like if I got to replace a door on my house, I could use a tape measure or I could ask my dog. One of these is a reliable pathway to truth. And he's right about that. And when it comes to spending $1,500 a channel or $8,000 a channel on mic preamps and all this crap, I think it's really important to know whether what you know is true or not. And I don't know, Tom, if you're really into the Anthony Magnabosco Street epistemology stuff or whatever.
Yeah, I've met him a few times.
Oh, okay. And so when it comes to this, so you understand, like our main goal is so that people can make the album they want to make and be able to afford to make the album they want to make. So make sure that they're only spending money on stuff that matters for them to spend money on. And that's our perspective of why we care about epistemology. But can you what can you say about how to know whether or not what you think you know is true? Like how do you find out?
Novel testable predictions, science, but I do think it's important to not to because each of the parts of the guitar matter to something, just not necessarily the sound. So like the neck matters to the feel of your fingers.
Oh yeah.
The body matters to the weight and the comfort on your leg. The frets matter to whether or not they're sharp and they cut your fingers. And so there's each part of the guitar has most important aspect to it, which you can grade the different materials on. Sound is not one of them. Sound does not make a difference to any of that garbage. It's a waste of time, except for like pickups. Pickups, it matters. The electrical wiring, that makes a difference on the sound. I don't know if the pots make much of a difference. I don't think they make much of a difference at all.
There's an amount of treble that they can bleed off depending on the resistance, but
oh, you definitely want to get the for the input jack, you want to make it a 4-sided input jack, because if you get the one-sided, then it's going to start to like noise is going to cut out because it's going to stop touching the lead, which sucks. So always make a 4-sided input jack. That part's important. You want a good wire to the amp, because if you don't, it's going to break. Like my first wire just started to tear, and the electrical wiring came out, and that sucked. So get one that's nice and cloth and woven together like fiber wire, so it doesn't freaking break. That matters. And so each of the parts has aspects to it which is as important as the crazy people talk about, but for different reasons.
Yeah, when it's actually things that make a difference, like we're okay with it. Like mechanically, you want a truss rod that's good in your neck. You want flat frets so that you're not buzzing all over the place. But the problem that I think we run into most of the time is that people don't know. First of all, they don't know which parameters they should be measuring, but that we can take care of. But they don't know how to tell whether or not what they think is true is actually true. So when they're talking about mic preamps, I mean that's one that always comes up. Like they I'm gonna get fired for this. They pretty much all sound the same unless they're broken. And even the cheapest mic preamps you can buy right now, like a $100 Focusrite audio interface, has better mic preamps on it than stuff did for $1 billion 40 years ago. I know you guys want the 50-year-old mic preamps because they have some magical warmth or whatever. Most of them are noisy. They claim that there's some character that happens when you purposely distort the mic preamp, which 99.9% of you will never do. And the 0.1% of you that actually do that, you won't be doing it 99.99999% of the time anyway. So this character you're talking about is full of crap. But when people are bombarded with these messages that they have to buy this or buy that, I really want to be able to find a way that people can find out whether or not, like you say, novel testable predictions, knowing how to know what they know, whether it's right or wrong. Like that's such a hard thing, man. Like you look at, when I'm not doing this stuff, I'm riding BMX stuff at the skate park, and you will see guys who they buy this like colored tape that the Olympic people have, and they stick it on them, and they go, I'm telling you, it fixes my muscles and it makes me jump higher. And I'm like, dude, no. Like, how do, I mean, there's got to be a willingness to care whether or not your beliefs are true. I mean, I think that's important, but assuming they do care, like, how do they find out whether or not it's real or not? Because if you go by consensus, like, everybody's talking about that chat AI, whatever thing going on right now. If you type in a controversial topic, it just goes to the consensus. Chat API, whatever that thing is, it says definitely 100% that wood makes a huge difference to the sound electric guitar. Like that's its answer. And when you Google stuff, that's how you end up. Whoever the loudest, noisiest people are, that's the consensus, So how the hell do you find out what in the world is actually true?
Yeah, you just gotta test it and make novel testable predictions. So like if my hypothesis is true, I will make this prediction about something in the future, which is different than if my hypothesis is false. And if it happens, then that's evidence. And if it doesn't, then you're falsified. Falsification principle is very good for practical application tests.
which I think most people won't know where to start, and I can tell you from my own life. I had a tech room in a very important studio, and we did so many of the albums that you know people heard. There really weren't that many big studios back in the day, and I worked in one of them. And I had a tech room with like every type of measuring device you could imagine, every oscilloscope that you could dream of, and I could test all these pieces of gear. And I would fix mic preamps when they were broken or other devices when they were broken. And even though I could measure it and it came out the same as everything else, I still believed, because my mentors had told me, that this mic preamp that tests exactly the same as this other one is so much better than it. And without this, you wouldn't be able to make any hit music. You could only make amateur stuff. And I'm sitting there with all these tools, and it's staring me right in the face that this is obviously, these things are the same, and yet the God of the gaps was there, and there's something. My mentors would say, "Oh, well, there's a part that you can't measure, and that's where all the sound is." But I'm like, how do you? I could never counter that, and not that I even care to convince them, because I don't want to take away their magic feather. I learned the hard way. But for me, or for noobs when they're just getting into it, instead of blowing all their money on dumb crap, um, you know, if somebody like me who had all that still was just stuck in that belief system, like how the hell do people get out of it when every expert that's out there is telling them exactly the opposite? So hard.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really hard to overcome authority figures, and it takes a special kind of mentality to question authority in those kinds of cases, but it's got to practice.
Well, I wonder if we can get people to practice that. Um,
It's
that there
okay.
are.
Just go to someone who you think is normally right, and just be like, "You're wrong." Just do that a lot. It's good to start young, especially if you're a kid and your teachers. You're gonna get in a ton of trouble. It's a great learning experience.
That's good advice. I had a friend that told me you got to practice saying no a couple times a day just so it feels natural.
Yeah.
It's easy to get taken advantage of in the music business if you're a little bit too willing to get work done, which is kind of a fanatic about it.
Yep.
But I think I probably tortured you long enough. I just really wanted to introduce everybody to you, and but one thing I gotta say, I see you doing the gaming stuff a lot, but I don't see you ever playing PlanetSide, and so I'd love to have you come and play with the Pink Fairies someday.
I did play that. That's the MMO, right? But it's
Yeah,
grind
yeah.
hard. I hate grind hard games. Bother me quite
Oh,
a
you don't
bit.
got to grind nothing. We just go around making trouble.
MMOs. I don't like MMOs. Nasty. Like the only MMO I played that I liked was Warframe. Warframe was good.
We do that from time to time. The thing I think it's my audio engineering group really. I think we played a lot of PlanetSide because there's nothing that can have that size of a battle. You can have hundreds of people on each side going, and it's kind of insane. But I know from time to time we like to go on was things like Rust or whatever, where you just build crap, And I don't know if you ever played that. It's like the most frustrating, painful. Like people know how long it takes you to get something done, and so they just take great delight in just ruining it for you. Like I've never
Yep.
seen more evil people in a game than in Rust. Like that just blows my mind how crazy people can be in there.
One thing is, PlanetSide did have an amazing audio soundtrack. Their soundtrack, they added some great music in that I really liked.
Oh
I
yeah.
copied some of it, especially like their Western style music, which is really good. That was one of my favorites. But yeah, I like games that are more short term investment. So like StarCraft, Warcraft, those were fun. Among Us, that was good. Good easy games that you can just like zone out and do. Those are my type.
What was the one you had on while I was kind of in your philosophy kindergarten? It was the other day. I think it looked like it started out kind of medieval, but it's kind of like Rust. You started having
Hades.
all kinds of more junk.
Hades,
Borderlands.
Hades, most likely, or might have been Tiny Tina's Wonderland, the Borderlands, the new Borderlands.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that looked interesting. But that's single player, or is that
I think it's multiplayer. It does both. It does co-op.
uh
But yeah, PS5 is what I play because I don't want to install anything on my computer because I'm lazy.
So you had to play PlanetSide on a console?
No, I back then that was a long time ago,
Oh, okay.
but I don't like MMOs. Ugh.
Well, I'll tell you what. Next time we're on, and we're all on, I'll try and invite you onto a game.
Sure.
But a lot of
And if
times
you
they
know
just
any,
like doing the puzzle stuff, like
yeah.
Sudoku or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah, Sudoku. Yes,
Yeah.
that's great. But yeah, if you know of any cool events going on, please invite me. I'm down to try stuff. Always concerts, parties, whatever, anything cool.
Yeah, there's usually we don't just do the of course audio engineering guys. You don't just do the games. You're always like mixing contests or bounties and just whatever. It's usually like or lots of times it's actually trying to find broken parts or exploits inside games. We do that a lot because a lot of our guys are into modeling, physical modeling and stuff, and so
I used to be a video game tester for Activision, so I used to do
okay,
that
yeah,
for 8
same.
hours a day. Oh,
Yeah, man. So that's the guys you call up to really test your junk out after the testers have gone through it and seeing if you can't ruin something for somebody else. Like one of our guys early on with Rust found out that how much trouble triangles can make to the rendering engine, and he got mad at guys on a server, so he built some giant pyramid with 5 billion triangles stuck together, and these guys had spent a week putting their junk together, and now they couldn't even move like more than a frame a minute because of taking the rendering time on this thing. Just stupid crap like that. We pull that kind of stuff from time to time.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
I was big into the menu file, so I'd copy the save file in different ways, and I'd get it to overwrite itself, which would cause a fatal error and crash the game every time. That was my thing.
all right. So we know who to invite for shenanigans next time. So that's good. Yeah, I guess that's all I really got to get for today. And thanks a ton for coming on. How do people get a hold of you and send you money?
Pornhub.com/TJump. I mean, YouTube too. I do youtube.com/TJump, but Pornhub's better. Do the Pornhub one.
And if you guys watch Modern Day Debates, you've probably seen a bunch of TJump stuff on there. He usually teams up with Godless Girl. He seems to really get along with well.
Yeah,
Who
probably
else is-
my future girlfriend.
Ask yourself, Danny. Danny Phil talk. There's an older debate with you and Danny, right? Like Danny said he was a duelist. Was that? I think that was.
I think
Do you
he's a
remember that?
potato. He's mostly a potato.
But he's on TikTok nowadays, and he's constantly in like knockdown drag out debates on TikTok lately. It's hilarious. But I didn't understand.
What is his TikTok? Is he Phil Talk on?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's Phil Talk, and it's pretty good. Like
That's not him.
It's a different caliber of people on that stuff.
Yep. I have been trying to figure out a way to build my TikTok and other social media and stuff. I need more connections in those realms. I need to grow more.
Well, my problem
scheduler guy. I need another scheduler guy too.
Oh, there's a few that watch this actually, but my thing with TikTok is unless they give you a stream key, it is so hard to deal with it from the computer. Same with Instagram. I used to use that yellow duck or whatever, but nowadays I just put the stuff on YouTube and Facebook and let it go. But I've been asking for a stream key for TikTok. Another guy, there's a couple guitar players that were able to get it and stuff. So I'm hoping one of these millennia I'll get a TikTok stream key. But I don't know, man. Danny's doing pretty good on there. But you usually see you on Modern Day Debates. Who else do you show up? You're not usually on the Clubhouse Debates stuff.
Not usually, not unless I'm paid to be there.
And then you just recently did like a Black Non-Believers conference too?
Yeah, I was invited to the Black Non-Believers CCon, so I went to there. It was a cruise to Mexico, a 6-day cruise.
Oh, cool.
And I was a speaker on there, and it was a lot of fun. Really good experience. Really appreciated the people. Great thing. It actually got some bad press recently. Mandisa Thomas, the president, had something happen. I don't know what it was. I didn't see anything. Nothing bad happened with me. But she apparently handled a personal experience badly, and a bunch of the Black non-believer presidents or other organizers walked out or something. So there's some bad press about that. It was posted on Only Sky Media. I've written an article for them. They're an atheist online blog post, as well as Hemet Meta. He posted it as well somewhere. So there was some bad press, but it was also, but from my perspective, it was a really amazing trip. Enjoyed the company of everybody there. So
Yeah, good. Well, that's awesome that you were on there. I'm not necessarily, that whole community gets a little bit fractured, and it's almost like you're forced to join one side or the other when these guys get in their fights and stuff. And so I just like, look, I'll eat what comes with it, just to be honest, and actually just go where the evidence lies. I know you get in a lot of trouble. I've seen you get in trouble for that one. I think you did a couple of debates where you were on the evidence side, and it's not always the popular side, and you kind of got it on that one. Yeah, that's rough, and this is, it's like, I wish we could at least agree that it's okay to go with the evidence, and even if it's your side messing up, sorry, just say, hey, my side, we should do better, instead of digging in, shut this guy up. But, all right, well, I think that's enough for today. But thanks a ton for being on here, Tom, and I'm sure we're gonna try and get you on one of our myth busting panels. So you can check our tests, because we try and test things, but sometimes we may not be asking the right questions. So I'd like to see what you have to say about that, and that'll be with some people that'll, unlike me, these will be people that will help you grow your audience.
awesome. Sounds good. It was great chatting with you. Really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you later.
All right, thank you. I'll see you later, and I'll see everybody else next week sometime. I'm gonna go hit the skate park if I can, and I'll see you guys next